Welcome back to another episode of OutLoudGeek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. I want to begin this video by taking a moment to thank everyone who has recently subscribed to the OutLoudGeek channel, because as of the time that I am recording this video, OutLoudGeek has reached 2,000 subscribers. And that would not be the case were it not for all of you. So from the bottom of my heart, I am deeply honored and grateful for your support. And to any of you who haven't yet subscribed to OutLoudGeek, I would like to ask you to please consider doing so, because it would greatly help my channel and it won't cost you anything to do so. I'd also like to ask all of you to please consider liking this video and to please leave a comment. Thanks. Now on with the topic. While it's hard to believe that we have now entered into the final month of 2024, in this box office roundup video for the weekend that ended on December 1st, one new movie made it into this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office. And the cumulative total earnings for this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office rose to $262.4 million, which was a 38.32% increase over last weekend's adjusted cumulative total of $189.7 million. And as good as that $262.4 million is, it wasn't as high as the weekend that ended on July 28th, which is when the movie Deadpool and Wolverine premiered in theaters. Still, it was a very good weekend for movie theaters. So this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office included the following. Opening at number 1 was Walt Disney Animation Studios' sequel entitled Moana 2. Falling to number 2 was Universal Pictures and Mark Platt Productions' musical fantasy entitled Wicked, starring Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, Jeff Goldblum, and Michelle Yeoh. Falling to number 3 was Paramount Pictures' Scott Free Films, Lucy Fisher's and Douglas Wick's historical drama Gladiator II, starring Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, and Pedro Pascal. Falling to number 4 was Seven Bucks Productions, Chris Morgan Productions, Detective Agency's Amazon MGM Studios, and MGM Pictures' very high-budgeted Christmas action comedy entitled Red One, starring Dwayne Johnson, Chris Evans, and Lucy Liu. And finally, rising to number 5 was the holiday comedy entitled The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, which still sounds like an awful Hallmark Christmas movie, but was actually produced by Kingdom Story Company, Media Capital Technologies, Lionsgate, Luminous Studios, and Fletchett Entertainment. Moana 2 opened by earning $135.5 million domestically, plus another $85.5 million for Thanksgiving, as well as $165.3 million internationally, for a global gross opening weekend box office total of $386.3 million. Domestically, Wicked earned another $80 million plus $69.9 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $262.4 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $46.6 million to bring its current international box office total up to $96.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $196.6 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $359.3 million. Domestically, Gladiator II earned another $30.7 million plus $25.5 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $111.2 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $43.3 million to bring its current international box office total up to $208.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $99.5 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $320 million. Domestically, Red One earned another $12.9 million plus $10.3 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $76.1 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $8.4 million to bring its current international box office total up to $72.6 million. So globally, the movie earned another $31.6 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $148.7 million. Domestically, the best Christmas pageant ever earned another $3.3 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $32 million. Internationally, the movie has earned $120,000 to bring its current global gross box office total up to $32.1 million. And as of this weekend, the three highest grossing movies, both domestically and worldwide, for 2024 remained Disney Pixar's animated movie Inside Out 2, Disney and Marvel Studios' MCU movie Deadpool and Wolverine, and Illumination Entertainment's animated sequel Despicable Me 4. Domestically, all three of these movies have ended their theatrical runs, so their final domestic box office earnings remain at $653 million, $636.7 million, and $361 million, respectively, and all three remain the highest grossing movies domestically so far this year. So Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine are the only two movies so far this year that have broken $600 million domestically. Further, Deadpool and Wolverine became the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time domestically. But internationally, each of these three movies are continuing to earn additional revenue. For Inside Out 2, the movie earned another $234,000 internationally to bring its current international box office total up to $1,045.5 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total increased by the same amount to $1,698.5 million, and it remains the first and only movie so far this year to break $1.6 billion worldwide. Further, Inside Out 2 has now earned $252.8 million more than last year's highest grossing movie, Barbie, which earned $1,445.6 million. For Deadpool and Wolverine, the movie earned another $30,000 internationally to bring its current international box office total up to $701.3 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total increased by the same amount to $1,338.1 million. So Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine remain the only movies so far this year to have broken $1 billion globally, while Deadpool and Wolverine remains the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. In terms of the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine became the franchise's sixth highest grossing movie worldwide of all time by outperforming the $1,336.5 million that was earned in 2018 by the movie Black Panther. It's also the first MCU movie since 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home to break $1 billion at the global box office. For Despicable Me 4, the movie earned another $1 million internationally to bring its current international box office total up to $608.3 million. So the movie's current global gross box office total increased by the same amount to $969.3 million. And it remains only the third movie so far this year to have broken $900 million globally. The reported production budgets for Inside Out 2, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Despicable Me 4 are $200 million, $250 million, and $100 million respectively. And to estimate what their break-even point ranges might be, I'll multiply each movie's production budget by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget. And when I do that, we get the following estimated break-even point ranges. For Inside Out 2, we get an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. For Deadpool and Wolverine, we get an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. And for Despicable Me 4, we get an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million. Thus, all three of these movies have made bank. I'm also tracking several other movies that are no longer in or never were in the top 5, which includes the following. Falling to number 7 was Columbia Pictures, Marvel Entertainment's, and several other companies' Marvel threequel entitled Venom: The Last Dance. And falling to number 9 was Universal Pictures and DreamWorks Animation's movie entitled The Wild Robot. Domestically, Venom: The Last Dance earned another $2.2 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $137.9 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $7.7 million to bring its current international box office total up to $330.3 million. So globally, the movie earned another $11.9 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $468.2 million. Domestically, The Wild Robot earned another $670,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $142.5 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $2.4 million to bring its current international box office total up to $179.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $4.1 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $321.6 million. Now, to know whether these movies are going to break even or not, as well as how much money they might be losing, we need to estimate their break-even points. When a movie's marketing budget is known, we can add it to the movie's production budget and then multiply the sum by 2. Otherwise, we can multiply the production budget by 2.5 for a single mid-range estimated break-even point, or by both 2.5 and 3.0 for a broader estimated break-even point range. Both methods account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves. For Moana 2, with its reported production budget of around $150 million, as reported by Screen Rant, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $375 million to $450 million. For Wicked, with its reported production budget of around $150 million, as reported by Screen Rant, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $375 million to $450 million. For Gladiator II, with its reported very high production budget of $250 million, as reported by Variety, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. For Red 1, with its reported very high production budget of $250 million, as reported by Variety, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. For Venom: The Last Dance, with its production budget of $120 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $300 million to $360 million. For The Wild Robot, with its production budget of $78 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $195 million to $234 million. So in this video, I am no longer projecting or never have projected what the final domestic or global gross box office earnings might be for the movies Venom: The Last Dance or The Wild Robot, because their expected future earnings are either currently too small, possibly non-existent, or going unreported, or their projected earnings aren't much higher than their current earnings. And in this case, both of these movies have already made bank. And that now brings us to the movies whose final domestic and global gross box office revenues I am currently projecting, which includes Moana 2, Wicked, Gladiator II, and Red 1. For the movie Moana 2, using a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $552.4 million at the low end, $631.2 million at the mid-range, and $735.5 million at the upper end. So Moana 2 will more than likely unseat Despicable Me 4 as the third highest grossing movie domestically so far this year, and it could conceivably outperform the domestic earnings of Deadpool and Wolverine, and quite possibly Inside Out 2. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 57.21%, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $965.7 million at the low end, $1,103.2 million at the mid-range, and $1,285.6 million at the upper end. So Moana 2 will probably unseat Despicable Me 4 as the third highest grossing movie worldwide for the year, but it currently doesn't appear to have the potential of outperforming either Deadpool and Wolverine or Inside Out 2 globally. Moana 2 could become the third movie to break $1 billion globally this year, and if it does join the highest three grossing movies of the year, Disney will have all three spots. Regardless, Moana 2 has already marginally broken even as of this weekend and will fully break even by next weekend. For the movie Wicked, using a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $487.2 million at the low end, $540.6 million at the mid-range, and $611.1 million at the upper end, which is a much higher projected range than last week. Wicked could potentially become the fourth movie to break $600 million domestically this year, but that's not as likely a scenario as it currently is for Moana 2, which will probably be the third movie to do so. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 73.04%, which is higher than last week, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $667 million at the low end, $740 million at the mid-range, and $836.6 million at the upper end, which is considerably higher than last week's projection. So with the movie's estimated break-even point range of $375 million to $450 million, Wicked will more than likely fully break even by next weekend. For the movie Gladiator II, using a range of possible average weekly draws from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $195.4 million at the low end, $215.4 million at the mid-range, and $241.8 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 34.75%, which is higher than last week by around 10%, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $562.4 million at the low end, $619.9 million at the mid-range, and $695.9 million at the upper end, which is more narrow than last week's projection. So with the movie's estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million, as of this weekend, the likelihood of Gladiator II being able to fully break even has become far less likely, but it might still be able to marginally break even. But if the movie is unable to break even, then it currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $0 to $187.6 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Paramount Pictures, Scott Free Films, Lucy Fisher, and Douglas Wick currently stand to lose around $0 to $93.8 million. For Red 1, given its very high production budget, I decided to estimate a range of average weekly drops for the movie using statistical calculations based on 9 previous movies that premiered between 2013 and 2022 that starred Dwayne Johnson, in which he had top billing and wasn't part of a broader recurring ensemble cast. That excluded the Fast and Furious franchise movies, but allowed me to include Snitch, G.I. Joe Retaliation, Hercules, San Andreas, Central Intelligence, Baywatch, Jumanji: The Next Level, Jungle Cruise, and Black Adam. These 9 movies have an overall average weekly drop of 32.01% with a standard deviation of 6.64%. From which I can create a range of possible average weekly drops for Red 1 from 25.37% to 38.66%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $112.9 million at the low end, $125.2 million at the mid-range, and $143.5 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. And that entire projected range now sits between the final domestic box office earnings for 2 of Dwayne Johnson's previous movies, 2014's Hercules and 2015's San Andreas, which earned $72.7 million and $155.2 million respectively. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 51.16%, which is higher than last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $220.6 million at the low end, $244.7 million at the mid-range, and $280.5 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection and places it between the final global gross box office earnings of 2016's Central Intelligence and 2013's G.I. Joe Retaliation, which earned $210.5 million and $375.7 million respectively. And given the movie's very high estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million, Red 1 remains a massive flop that currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $344.5 million to $529.4 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that 7bucks Productions, Chris Morgan Productions, Detective Agency, Amazon MGM Studios, and MGM Pictures currently stand to lose around $172.3 million to $264.7 million. So Red 1 could potentially become the biggest flop for 2024, since its current projected losses are on par with those of this year's current biggest flop, Argyle, whose losses range from $201.9 million to $251.9 million based on my own calculations. So as of this weekend, Red 1 is a definite flop, while Venom: The Last Dance, The Wild Robot, Deadpool and Wolverine, Inside Out 2, and Despicable Me 4 have all made bank. Moana 2 is well on its way of becoming a huge box office hit, while Wicked is on its way to breaking even, and Gladiator II might be able to marginally break even. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to each and every one of you who has subscribed to support this channel. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, and Blue Sky by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is OutLoudGeek.